Good evening, everyone, here from Finland. And I've managed to get back across the Atlantic waters and participate with you in our ongoing uh, dissipation of glamour work. There may be some adjustment in that during the next few weeks, and we'll get that to you because there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be broadcast and done during this Christmas and it turns out full moon season. But we're trying to work out a system so that those of you who are used to working in a regular manner can continue to do so, even if Tuija and I have to attend to the full moons and other December broadcasts. So we'll get that to you as soon as we possibly can. We're in the process of working it out now. Um, all right. Well, these are glamorous times. I'm reminded, it's not so nice to mention it, but December 7th was a time long ago in the United States that precipitated its entry into the Second World War. And what's so interesting is that the three Axis nations at that time were deeply affected by glamour. Well, maybe it was uh, glamour was primarily concentrated in Germany with its Pisces personality, you can imagine, right? But in Japan, there was the Maya, particularly, an aspect of glamour in a way. And in Italy, which started its fascist movement in earnest, in a way, even before Germany, in terms of elected officials, then we had the precipitation of illusion. Now we can say, well, all that is done and past. But what Tibetan wrote after the war was that fascism was still a danger and that all kinds of, the door where evil was supposed to be sealed was left partially open. Maybe it was impossible to seal it entirely. And we've already seen, well, I'll just speak for the United States for the moment, the recurrence of a kind of blatant fascism and Nazism, which would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. So, indeed, those same forces which want to rob humanity of its God given gift of choice are again pushing for the denial of freedom under fascism, Nazism, and other things that the Tibetan warned about. Of course, in Russia, evolution has to occur. And in the UK is much challenged at this time, and we do hope you will be joining us on a webinar. Let's see, I wonder, BL and Michael, can you possibly pull down the link for the Friday evening webinar for the Brexit issues? It just comes up Sunday evening, rather. It comes up in just a couple of days. And if you can put that in the chat box, it would be great if you could join us for that little meditation and discussion. And then during the voting that will occur after that on Monday and on Tuesday, when the vote will probably be taken, probably, we don't know for sure, we have a broadcast and not a webinar. But our meditative attention to preserving the unity of Europe, because, Master R wants that. He is the regent of Europe and the regent of the United States. And even the United States has been threatened with the breaking up into autonomous zones. Secession ideas are again floating around, and maybe 6 different regions of the country uh, are predicted by some of the more pessimistic types. So we also have that as a possibility. Should this Brexit occur, it's possible that other nations will seek to withdraw from the European Union and thereby go, at least in my opinion, against the unitive right relationship kind of connection that Master R, as the regent of both of these areas, would like to see happen. So we don't want retrogression, and we'll give ourselves the occult opportunity, the esoteric opportunity, to think in terms of preserving the union. You know, one of the reasons that Lincoln was so successful as a first ray type with a very strong second ray is that he was able to work with a factor of synthesis rather than division. And when so many people wanted to divide the United States according to its polarity, its Geminian polarity of North and South, he fought for the preservation of the Union, and he did succeed. Ray 1 and Ray 2 energy wielded powerfully by an individual who was a racial avatar, according to DK. So always the hierarchy seeks to have unitive qualities, and it works for internationalism rather than the Martian tendency of division and war, by the way. And we do have, interestingly, in the horoscope of the leader of the United States, a very, very prominent Mars rising in egotistical Leo, at least at a certain stage of development, before the fifth petal is completely unfolded, a very egotistical situation thriving on division. So we people who are esoterically inclined and are receiving such expert advice from the great teacher, Master DK, we have to work behind the scenes to make sure that as much of the power of unity exists in a very divisive situation. Now, before we get into our reading, let's just have just a little bit of just a few moments of silence and reflection. So basically, we are offering ourselves as a subjective group to help carry out some esoteric work which will weaken and dissipate those forces which work against unity, right human relations, right international relations, right relations between the various continents where human beings have their living. We are working for unity. It's a second ray thing. And in anticipation of the reappearance of the Christ and the prior externalization of his hierarchy, we work with that hierarchical quality of love and wisdom. We see through things. We are not bewildered. I mean, of course, we are somewhat bewildered, but less and less bewildered by wrong desire, which is of very ancient origin and from which probably none of us is free completely until the fourth initiation. Everything depends on whether you see yourself as a personality or whether you've been able to make that contemplative transition into the field of the soul on the higher mental plane. I don't know how real the sense of being the soul is to all of us. The soul is behind, the soul is within, the soul stands back, the soul is the observer, and if the vehicles of the personality were to disintegrate immediately, that factor called the soul would be definitely our center of identity, and we have to learn how to detach and detach and detach until the spirit itself, pure being really, at the heart of the monad, becomes the center of our identity. We can talk about those things, but we actually have to establish in our consciousness those realizations. Maybe it's an atmic realization, actually. That's where realization really focuses on the cosmic physical plane. And it's probably beyond us to a degree, but we want to move in the proper direction. So let's just sound the Om, affirming that we intend to be of assistance to the great ones as by long sanctioned methods they proceed to disrupt and dissipate the glamour which invades the life of billions of people. Excuse my cough and my faltering ohms. I've been in, rather polluted air, at least polluted for me, and now I'm back in Finland where the air is clear, and I hope to get this off my chest, but it'll take a little while. Okay, so let's read together, and I just want to first to welcome you all. Alex, who I hope will have a chance to speak about the upcoming Brexit vote, the solutions vote. She'll be with us in this broadcast. Anna Marie, Annette, Antoinette, Ariel, Carl. Okay, and Christ College is with us down in New Zealand. Fantastic, and welcome. Orest and Julia, and whomever may be tuning in from there. Deborah, Francois, Frida, Jan, Jean-Pierre, Joan, John, Karen, Catherine, Lila, Lona, Marianne, Marissa, Mariut, Martha, Natnia, Nyenke, Olivia, who sponsors this with Tuija and myself, and Sandra, Suzanne, and of course Tuija's here, Yvonne, Zenaidi, and backing us up here are BL and Michael on the technical side, just to make sure we don't have a pantomime, okay? And other factors, and also to answer your questions. And like I say, BL or Michael, if it's possible to go to get the link from the, you know what page I mean, from our webinar page, this page. Maybe I can do it. I don't know. It would be this one. We stand for the...
Michael posted it.
Michael got it. Okay, it's not in handouts. It's in chat. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, excellent. So if you want to be joining us at 7:30 GMT, which is sort of the beginning of the run-up to the final vote on Theresa May's solution to the present problem, then please use this link, and it will be a webinar on Sunday evening, 7:30 GMT, later here in Finland, of course, and just make your own calculation. Really, when you're dealing with calculations, probably your time from GMT will change only 2 times a year, and maybe not even that. Like if you live in Arizona, it's always going to be 7 hours from GMT, always, always, always. But when you have advancing the clock, it'll be 1 hour less. Retracting the clock will be 1 hour more. So just get used to that mathematics. It's not so difficult. If you had to be an astrologer in the old days, before computers and almost before those little calculators came in, you'd have to figure out how to do that. Okay. Now, let's go. We have the idea of the astral plane, or at least what is done with astral matter under the influence of corrupted human desire. We have the idea of distortion, blindness, misshapenness, confusion, darkness, not quite the wonderful thing that people imagine when they think of the astral plane. Okay, so that's DK speaking about this. So let's go on, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in this fog and how to achieve clarity of vision, because our subject at the moment, we've dealt with illusion in a very cursory manner, of course, but we've dealt with it, and review those 7 ways of illusion, which are largely based on an inadequate mental approach to reality. Basically, I would just say that. Now we're on the astral plane, which is the major area of difficulty in the world because not so many people are yet mentally focused. So it's a different kind of glamour, or it is glamour proper. And we don't realize the fog we live in. And he gives us reasons why we don't realize it. It's so blended together with our own astral body. So let's go and think as we go along about things you might like to discuss, things that will be of interest to you, questions that you may have. And, like I say, when you join us a little late, I can't be reading your names, but I'm happy that you're here. Yvonne, Suzanne, maybe someone else too, I can't see. Okay. There are 4 things which you who seek to work with glamour need to grasp. Now, obviously, here we are week after week for the most part, and we are among those who seek to work with glamour. We are aligning ourselves with the divine observers, meaning we have some degree of soul consciousness, and we are looking on as if we were the soul, and we're using our head center, our heart center, and our solar plexus. In that second group of observers, we're also directing energy very much through the ajna center. 4 basic recognitions, which when understood will serve to, now look at these words, clear and lighten, and therefore straighten your way. Well, clarification of all the confusion and the many voices of the astral plane, the introduction of dissipating light onto the astral plane, and you know how it is with all the lies and prevarications and avoidances. They go like this, they are circuitous, let us say. And he's looking for the straight, clear solution which sees reality in an uncomplicated, undistorted manner. Okay, so each human being stands in an environing world of glamour. That's all of us. We're in it. We may not be over our heads. Maybe our heads are free. There's this wonderful, I think I worked on it in a treatise on white magic. You'll see it if you listen to some of these videos toward the end, where the person is sort of swimming in the water, then standing on the earth, and the head is free, and then eventually the water sinks all the way down, and he's standing on the land, and the water is no longer an obstruction. So all of us are standing this way in an environing world of glamour, which is the result of what? A, his own past with its wrong thinking. We are certainly conditioned by everything we've done over hundreds and even thousands of lives. Just think how long it's been since early Atlantean days when the Black Lodge aided in the creation of glamour to mislead the human beings. And this was especially, I think, when the group came in from the moon chain in the third subcategory of the fourth root race. So our own past, it causes also our disease. Our disease is rooted in the past. Wrong thinking, notice that's there too. It's not just wrong feeling. Selfish desires, as long as we think we are the personality, we have a major distortion working. We have a very limited view of what we are, and we seek to serve it. And it should not be served, but you can hardly help it in the early days because selfishness is natural and a necessary stage of strengthening, actually. So our own past with its wrong thinking, selfish desires, and misinterpretation of the purposes of life, and that's where the illusion factor is also joining, because illusion under Mercury, in a way, is largely misinterpretation. Of Scorpio, it is said, let Maya flourish and deception rule. And that's a very early phase of Mercury and of Scorpio, those two centers of power being related to each other, and later, of course, Scorpionic intuition, and also Mercurian intuition freeing us from this, but later. Okay. Misinterpretation of the purposes of life. You see this all the time. You talk to people, what's your life for? What are you doing? What do you hope for? Where are you going? And you get some of the conventional answers inculcated by rigid religious philosophies, or you just get some things that, just don't make sense. So that's the beauty of the ageless wisdom, that it presents such a beautiful, reasonable, logical vision of what lies ahead and the way of getting there. There is, or has been, no comprehension of the intended life purpose as visioned by the soul. See, when we are being the soul and have not forgotten everything we knew, as we come into incarnation, then we see the intended life purpose. And there cannot be this comprehension of the intended life purpose until there is some definite organization of the mental body. So, when people come along and they say, well, the Bailey work is very mental and all that, and why are you cultivating the mind so much? Because the mind is the slayer of the real and all that. Just remind people that the mind is also the revealer of the real. And unless we have really a mind held steady in the light, an illumined mind reflecting the light of the soul and giving free passage to the light of the soul, we cannot be free of these misinterpretations, these illusions, and these glamours. So, indeed, let us cultivate our mind. Let's see here. 4 things we have to grasp standing in the world of glamour, and what about it? It's the result of our past. That's number 1. And over the long period of time, we've made so many mistakes in thinking and desiring. We have worked with an inadequate, temporarily inadequate, and unillumined instrument that we call the developing mind. And mostly we've worked with just our urges of an emotional type, which were uh, raised to a type of unnatural intensity by the efforts of the Black Lodge. So it's not just our own human errors, which are abundant, but the deliberate interference by these types that were initiates in the first solar system and came here to confound the progress of those who wanted to move into the expression and understanding of the love energy. Okay, so what else is causing us to stand in glamour? Uh, his family desire life, both past and present. We certainly, what the Jesuits have said, it's kind of a little bit disheartening to say, give us the child until he's 7 years old, and then you can have him for the rest of his life. Meaning that early conditioning is very powerful. And people, oftentimes after they think they know better and they think they have um, left behind a conditioning from their family, which they recognize as leading in unwholesome directions, again fall victim to that early type of conditioning. It's so strong, and when they experience disappointment, they just fall back into it because it has not been expiated. So the family desire life, both past and present, and you can just examine your family, family of origin, just for a moment. Think for a moment. What was the prevailing emotional tone, in your, I mean, it's a family of origin, it's a physical family, but there's also an emotional conditioning that goes on. What did you learn? What was inculcated into you by the kind of emotional interplay that went on there? And if you do find, the expression of negative emotion to any great extent, you know that you've been wounded by it and that it lurks in the subconscious, and one has to deal so carefully with it. As you begin to advance into greater light, you will find yourself opposed to family members who are still conditioned by this early desire life, and it may block you, but the worst would be if within you it has a recrudescence and you fall back. So the family desire life has made one stand in glamour. This becomes increasingly potent as evolution proceeds, and the desire life of the family unit becomes, something is wrong here, becomes marked and emphasized, constituting then inherited and demonstrated psychological tendencies and characteristics. This is such a fuzzy area, Not so many of us are really good at seeing ourselves, how we really do react, and what effect that reaction has on other people. Things are so ingrained, so automatic, so reactive that we just don't see things as they are. But maybe with spiritual discernment, one of the first aspects of the soul potencies, we can begin to see in our life what is spiritual and what is just sending us right back into this rather primitive stage based upon thinking that what you are is the personality. Okay, now what else is causing us to stand in glamour? As we have seen, each of us is surrounded by glamour. Now, first of all, that's a fairly humbling thing to accept. We may think, oh, well, glamour, I've taken care of that, I'm certainly, between the first and second initiation, I'm probably very close to the second initiation. Certainly I've taken care of glamour, but no, these things persist even after the second degree. And, DK asks us to be humble in the recognition that these negative stages are still present. Now, he said an interesting thing. He said, both Alice Bailey and I have a horror of glamour. That's a very strong word, isn't it? Now, it may be a very long time since says the Tibetan, since I have succumbed to glamour, and a less lengthy period since Alice Bailey has succumbed to glamour. One could even see that in her life when there were moments when it may have been a succumbing to glamour. Nevertheless, we both have a horror of what glamour is, because you can see if we act under glamour, we can destroy humanity and destroy our planet. For instance, look at this glamour of materialism. He tells us that the system which really represents materialism is capitalism. And he says in this uncompromising quote, which I've quoted before and which is so shocking, he says, capitalism has emerged and wrecked the world. Wow. So materialism is still riding strong, and this material circumscribed view of what we are would have us sacrifice the whole planet and the future of human beings to come, all for the gathering of our own personal materialistic wealth. And there are people who are like that. They're so short-sighted that in this life, their only life, right, they gather everything they can to themselves. They corner the market, as it is said of Scorpio, and they don't care even that humanity should go down in future times because they are not going to be there and involved in it. Well, of course, they'll be very surprised. So, national glamour. The sum total of the desire life plus the illusions. Notice he's not making a really hard and fast distinction here between glamour and illusion, because we human beings, we're very kama-manasic. When we think, we feel. When we feel, we think, All the psychologists recognize this. So it behooves the Tibetan not to make too clean-cut a distinction between glamour and illusion. So the desire life of any nation and the illusions of that nation. Well, you can just take a look at Germany. We are the best. We are the highest that humanity has ever produced. We are the master race. That's the illusion, right? And our desire is to get rid of all those who in any way pollute our elevation over all other human beings. Hence the horrific, drastic purgations that took place with the Nazis, where they killed off the Untermensch, the under human being, the low human being, lest they get polluted. Now, the Germans wanted to get that out of their system because they had been defiled by the Untermensch. So this is this is obviously a horrific national glamour based on huge misinterpretation of what racial purity is, a complete materialistic system. He said if the Nazis win, it'll be the most materialistic system that the world has ever produced. Okay? So, and the desire to reach the stage of the great Teuton of 250,000 years ago, who was completely pure and possessed of all the psychic powers. That was the desire life of those who were leading the nation. So anyway, these illusions, these desires, these we term national characteristics. Now, we all recognize it, even if people are different from each other, you can maybe recognize a Frenchman from a German, from an Englishman, there's certain defining characteristics from an American. Okay. National characteristics, and they are so persistent and marked that they are usually recognized as embodying national psychological traits. I was amused. A friend of ours that we hadn't seen in a long time. I was in a store and I was talking. My voice tends to resonate. And he came. Oh, there you are. I just thought it was another loud American. Well, it was another loud American, because maybe we Americans don't show as much restraint in public, where others are much more buttoned up and so forth. Just one of those characteristics of our Gemini communicative personality and so forth. But, we do recognize the states, and we can probably identify certain characteristics that we naturally associate with the psyche of particular nations, even though the people in those nations may have a greater or lesser amount of these characteristics. These are, of course, says the Tibetan, based on ray tendencies. Yeah, well, that's true. Look at those gung-ho 6-ray Americans. Past history, where do you come from individually and as a nation? And world interrelations. How are we standing up in our relations with people in different nations and the nations themselves? But they constitute in themselves a glamorous condition out of which every nation must work as it, now notice the word marches. I'm going to say, why is march there? There's a kind of a steady rhythm of advancement. So the glamorous conditions out of which every nation must work as it marches on towards the realization of and identification with reality. So this is very important, and just, let's do that. Let's just have a moment. And what we'll do is say, okay, I am a national of this particular nation. What is it in my desire life and my illusions and my characteristics that has marked me as being a national of this particular nation or region? Let's just think for a moment. And some of this may have to do with whether our particular nation is relatively developed or undeveloped, whether it's in an extroverted stage in the cycle it's passing through, or a more introverted stage. You know that the statement, oh, you Americans, you're all alike. Oh, you Englishmen, you're all alike. You know, these are based on generalizations and they are not really accurate, but they're based on the viewing of certain tendencies, and often glamours are involved with these particular tendencies, glamorous conditions. So we have to see what it is in this incarnation that we may have inherited from the national psyche. Now, what we've been doing here, each human being stands in an environing world of glamour, and we've been looking at why is this so? That's been our inquiry at this point. So I'm just going to highlight that. Now we go on to point 4. We're extending the idea of national glamours and illusions, which certainly are certainly there. I mean, sometimes you go to a country and you say, hey, I really fit here, or I don't fit at all, given the kind of different response of the nationals of that particular country. Now, so let's extend the above idea. An extension of the above idea into what we call racial glamour, using the word race to mean the human race. I'm sorry. So what is it that humanity as a whole at this time is subject to in terms of the large racial glamour, which includes people of all races? There's certainly one, and let's see. This constitutes a very ancient glamour, or almost a series of glamours. Notice these words, of entrenched desires. They don't go away, no matter how often you're born into the human race over a period of time. They are there, potent aspirations of some kind, and definitely human-made forms, desire forms. These are largely, let me kind of put that in, desire, I'm sorry, get this straight. There are desire forms and thought forms. Desire forms and kama-manasic forms. Fluidic. Notice that word, because it is, after all, isn't it, Neptune, god of the waters, which rules the astral plane. Fluidic, enveloping, pulsating with dynamic life, because that's where we are concentrating, and our particular planet is still astrally polarized. Our particular solar system is a major astral Buddhic solar system, pulsating with dynamic life, and these forms seek to hold the consciousness of humanity upon the astral plane. We've seen it over and over again. Feeling surmounts thinking. I almost said feeling trumps thinking, but then I thought better of it. Feeling surmounts our power to think, and it's how we feel that elects our officials, our government agencies. It's our fears, it's our hopes, it's our desires, all those things. So there are forces which seek to hold our consciousness down onto the level of liking and disliking, and I'm pro and I'm con, I'm for, I'm against, I'm attracted, I'm repelled, all of those polarities which have to do with the solar plexus. Now he gives the example, right? Such a glamorous concept, think of it, because he says it might have to be removed. Such a glamorous concept is that of money and its materialistic value. Okay, we all know that it can be used for great purposes, and many, do distinguish themselves that way. But ordinarily, a glamorous concept is that of money and its materialistic value. This glamorous desire to have that which all people crave so that they can fulfill their desires, this glamorous desire is like a dense, widely distributed fog, cutting off the vision of truth and distorting a very large number of human values. Recently, we've had some horrific things happen in the world, and we see that people, those in power, would like to shove under the rug the manner in which these happenings have gone against the highest human values. You know, we list among these truth, unity, the respect for others, justice. All of these go through any sign of the zodiac, and you'll find one of the higher human values. But if money is involved, if you will lose money by standing up for the higher human values, there are some people that just insist, look, we've got to have the money, whatever that person did, however our highest values have been distorted or compromised. We've got to have the money. So, and that, of course, lowers the moral standard of the individual who speaks in that manner. Now, some of you know specifically what I'm talking about. I'm not going to get into it, too extensively, just to say that when you start selling unity in order to preserve money, then we're in trouble, okay? And this is going to be acted out on the world stage in the days which are coming, because the people who want power above all things and power over other people and wealth over other people will always sell out these second-ray values which correlate with the soul of our planet, the soul of the hierarchy, the soul of the solar system. They'll always sell that. And that's the first thing to go while they preserve their first-ray, third-ray values. Those first-ray, third-ray values come from a previous solar system, and they were endemic on the moon chain, and we're trying now to balance them with the second-ray values of love and unity in this particular planetary scheme, chain, and globe. All right. This is an important subject, and I don't want to go any further right now. But we'll continue with this. We're on page 72, and we've begun on page 71. Hey, that's good, 70, 71. We're really moving along here. So I'm going to wait for number 2 until our next time. Now, as I've already told you, there are a huge number of programs coming up, and we're dealing with Christmas broadcasts, and we're dealing also with the full moon. So there's going to be some changes in the Ask program for a while. Next week, I think we still continue to broadcast, but after that, we may have a little hiatus while we concentrate on the Christmas and the full moon. Okay, so this is the end of number 97, and our reading has been number 37, and the date, today's date, is the 7th of December, and we're simply here on pages 70, 71, and we go to 72, and we're going to begin the Dissipation of Glamour work, heading towards 100. Whoop. I hope I didn't. You know what can happen when you press the wrong button. I can blank the screen entirely. Okay, and this will be. Well, I just don't want to say. Uh, I just want to say that we have to work out when this will be. Okay, reading 78, and let's say, well, maybe it's next week. I think we're pretty good with next week, and I know Tuija will correct me if I've done this incorrectly. But next week, I think next Friday, we're okay. But after that, we're going to have a little hiatus and a little change so we can properly do the whole Christmas season and the full moon. Okay, so we'll start right here about the fog which envelops humanity at this time, and we'll talk about the substantial nature of this fog. And it is substantial because it is made of atoms and molecules of a more refined type, yes, but and temporarily invisible type to modern science, but made of, according to occult chemistry, atoms, maybe on the atomic subplane, and then the molecules, which are the different combinations on the 6 subsidiary subplanes. So indeed, this fog is a real, unreal thing. It presents us with a vision of unreality, but it is there. And there's no way that the astral plane does not exist as an atomic level of nature, but there's a way in which it has no true existence in terms of the forms which have been falsely created by the wrong desires and wrong thoughts of humanity. All right, so now comes the moment when, let's see if I always try to make this small, but never succeed. But let's see. Let's see what I can do here. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. But not too good either. Let's see if I can bring it down onto one page. Well, there it is. And not too bad. Okay. All right, good, everybody. So now your thoughts, your questions about these factors which contribute to the fact that all of us are standing in an environing world of glamour. The water may be over our head. The water may be up to our neck, up to our knees, or we may be, that's interesting about the knees, if we kneel properly, it will have the humility to see through, and then under our feet, as we find in that treatise on white magic, old commentary section, the different levels of the water of the beglamored person and the one who is learning how to extricate himself from glamour. So, and any other question or thought that you may have about occultism in general, because what I have to say is that occultism is one vast field of knowledge, and every unit of knowledge is related to every other unit of knowledge. Inevitably, we just have to see the links. If we do our work with Mercury, which will reveal all the links between those points of light or units of knowledge, we will be able to apply Jupiter to make the entire picture into a wholeness, which it naturally is, and we will free ourselves from fragmentary vision, which is the very basis of illusion. Okay, so let's see. Your thoughts, your questions. And of course, also, Michael and BL and so forth, if you have thoughts and questions, you can naturally bring them forward. Is there anybody who would like to say anything, write anything, ask anything?
Hi, Michael.
Okay, Michael.
Hello,
Hi.
Michael.
Hello.
Yeah, my understanding is that this particular book was written kind of like a textbook in lessons for the second seed group. And he's kind of referring to their work here, or that group, as those who are working with glamour. But I think it's also important to know that all of us as disciples really need to take this to heart and work with dissipating our own glamours and dealing with our own illusions.
Agreed. And remember that every one of these seed groups was meant to proliferate into a number of groups across the world who would be working with the problem. So it may have begun with one small group specifically under Master DK's direction, but it was meant to expand, and eventually, I think when Vulcan is discovered, frankly, large groups will be standing in spiritual being, standing steadfastly with their thought amassed against the prevailing glamour. So we may be, I know work has to be done now, but we may even be a couple, 3 centuries from the point when that more concerted attack on glamour by large groups will take place. So we have to begin now, and yes, you're absolutely right. If we cannot detect our own personal glamours, which are always kind of hiding, because DK tells us how our own condition blends with the astral plane, and we cannot, because everything is so fluid and because the boundaries between things keep changing, very difficult to detect. Very difficult. Other people see it, and other people will point out the results in our life of those glamours that we do not detect.
It's always easier to see the glamour in someone else and not in ourselves. It goes back to that biblical story of removing the speck from, taking the beam out of your own eye before trying to remove the speck from your brother's.
Exactly, the speck and the beam. So all of this has to do with the psychological dynamic of projection, wherein we tend to see in others undesirable traits which we have not yet detected as belonging to our own psyche. So it takes a lot of work, and a lot of psychotherapy and psychosynthesis and all this to really wake up to the fact, oh my goodness, I'm doing this. And I haven't taken care of my own house, and already I'm trying to take care of someone else's house. Okay, thank you, Michael. Other thoughts or questions about this or any other factor in occultism? Just, checking for your hands if you want to raise them or want to speak.
Frida.
All right. And then I see Tuija also. So first Frida, and O.N. Jan has a statement or question. Okay, Frida, go ahead.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm kind of cheating. I'm looking ahead into the next class, but a line I thought was really interesting is his comment. He says, the forms of glamour on the astral plane are even more substantial, but less clearly defined. He says about thought forms, they're dynamic, penetrating, clear, and outlined. Glamours are smothering, vague, and enveloping.
Yeah, those are the distinctions.
Sea of fog, yeah.
Yeah, that's coming in the next paragraph, and we will certainly deal with that. Now, of course, when he says more substantial, he means in a way heavier in terms of their atomic structure. The atoms of the astral plane are less dense and less complicated than the etheric permanent atom of the etheric physical plane, but they are also more dense and more complicated than the atoms of the mental plane. So in a way, they are heavier, and they are, uh, we're getting a lot of stuff. I don't know what all that sound is. I tell you what, while I'm speaking, I'm just gonna mute you there for a second and see if that will help. I don't know. Yes, it did. It helped. There was something going on with your computer, but I'll just continue to speak on that point. The fluid dynamics for a physicist are different than studying the dynamics of air, let us say. And so once we get into the astral plane, we are really dealing with fluid dynamics. And because of Neptune's rulership, the forms are not stabilized, but flow into one another. Now, they are still atomic forms, and sometimes we can call them even molecular, because the atomic forms for any cosmic subplane are found on the first subplane of that particular cosmic subplane. And everything under that, in other words, planes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, are considered to be molecular. They are heavier in weight, and they have less of a binding power. In other words, they're not held rigidly. And therefore, a lot of confusion is existing with the forms that are outpictured through the imagination on the astral plane. But when we get to the mental plane, we find that different planets are ruling. And one of the planets that is ruling the mental plane, the lower mental plane especially, is the planet Saturn, which in its lower aspect makes all things concrete and relatively stable and non-fluid. You know how it is when you're under Saturn, you're just stuck and things are as they are, and it's not easy to make a fluid transition into something else. So Saturn and Mercury are found there, and Mars as well are found on the lower mental plane, and they contribute to an entirely different dynamic that is occurring between the forms. The mental forms are much more definite. We can see them with greater objectivity. They don't tend to blend and merge with each other in the same way that the Neptunian desire forms do. But remember that humanity is kama-manasic at this point, and so we have sort of a combination of both operating at the same time. And, we will take these planets all the way up, and what we'll discover is that they have a different kind of function on every plane. Yes, Mercury is very powerful on the plane of concrete mind, but it's also extremely powerful in the egoic lotus and in the abstract mind and in the Buddhic intuition. Mercury is right there. And yes, Saturn is very potent in the concrete, there's the word, right? Concrete mind. But if you start to look higher, he's also going to be found in the abstract mind. He's definitely going to be found on the plane of will, which is Atma. And because Saturn is the physical permanent atom of our entire solar system, he's going to be found strongly on the highest level, where that physical permanent atom, which is cosmic etheric, will be found in the sea of fire on the adic plane, the logoic plane. So we have to know where all of these conditioning influences are directed, and what their effect may be on each of the higher and lower subplanes. In any case, yes, we get enveloped, weighed down, confused by this heavier substance of the astral plane, heavier than the lower mental plane. Okay, Frida, anything else there?
Yeah, I just thought, wouldn't it be cool sometime in the future if there was a special light that we could shine and see where all these glamours were and what they look like,
Well,
how they're surrounding us, and
there is a
stuff
special,
in our home. Just like we can clear out cobwebs, from our ceiling, we can clear out.
good point. It's because the cobweb can be so
Yeah.
invisible until you shine a light upon it. But Frida, there is a special light, and it comes with our beam of light, made of material, mental, and soul light that we use in our meditation. So, in a way, it's going to, it will be revealed. Okay, thank you. Okay, now let me go further. Let's see, Jan, you had a question here, and then I'm going.
Jan writes, does it seem that all glamour holds desire as the base of its expression?
Yes, because desire is a reaching towards some kind of condition, some formal condition, which seems attractive, even though the desire body that is producing it is not very highly developed and may have been distorted by external negative influences. Glamour is foundationally found in the desire body, which is always supposed to be a reaching towards something better and higher, right? But, when desire is distorted, DK told us about Atlantean days and the terrible distortion in the desire for completely unnecessary, luxurious objects of attainment. So unless there's light, we don't know how to desire. And this is key, because the light of the intuition has to affect the imagination. Otherwise, we're going to be held in a very low condition of desire, desiring things that lead nowhere or worse. So that's why the light has to penetrate the astral plane, and that's what we're doing. In this kind of work that we're engaged in together, we're bringing in a triple light, an instrument to help penetrate the astral plane so that truth can also be seen and expressed on the astral plane. Okay, and as long as...
writes...
Yes, go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
Marute writes, work is hard work in ourself and need much truth.
Well, that's the difficulty, isn't it? How you're completely correct there. How truthful are we with ourselves? I mean, and even if we really could see what is not quite right about ourselves, will we even admit it? See, first of all, we're blind and we don't see. Then we begin to see and we can't believe it. Then we see clearly and we have to decide whether we're going to be courageous about what we see or whether we're going to kind of deny it. None of us is perfect, and we're all affected by glamours at this stage of our evolution, and maybe when we can finally take the fourth initiation, that type of glamour, which is not cosmic glamour, will be banished from our life. Meanwhile, the personal approach with rigorous analysis of our condition according to the light of truth has to be pursued, and then we turn our attention as a purifying group or a group in process of being purified. We turn our attention upon the general mass condition. The mass consciousness of Cancer on the astral plane, the incredible gullibility of the sign Pisces in its lower expression. It's like there are a lot of Pisces people that'll just believe anything just because it's spoken. You swallow the whale, hook, line, and sinker. And then there's Scorpio, which is a deliberate kind of water sign distortion occurring, where we deliberately cultivate Maya and illusion. Let Maya and deception. Let Maya flourish and deception rule. and we embrace the heads of the Hydra rather than learn how to take their vitality away through intuitive perception. So all those water signs are active in our glamorous condition, and none of us, I dare say, unless, do we want to stand forth as the third degree initiate? Have we conquered all the 9 heads of the Hydra? Okay. All right. Now, Tuija was there, and she had something to say for quite a while. So here we go, Tuija. You're self-muted. Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Go ahead.
do you hear me?
Yes, well.
Okay, I'm on the road, so there might come some cars, I'm sorry. But it just came to my mind when Michael was talking about this problem to see in oneself. And one of the reasons is that because the great glamour what we have, which is related to the whole life, is expressed by the sun's sign. And when we think about the same analogy, that when we are blinded by the light of the soul, the personality is blinded by the light of the personality, the physical sun per se, or we can think about the sun sign of a particular life. And this sun sign is expressing for us this hidden glamour that we are working through the whole life for that whole incarnation. And that would give us a hint to try to go into that big glamour that we have. We have those small glamours that are easier to see, that we have to be kind to everybody and try to understand and so forth. And then we have this big mysterious glamour, what is very hard to define for oneself. If we have good friends and our spouse, we can, because they see it or part of it, the tail of it. So to go into that, and was it Vera who was, who was just asking? I didn't hear well who was the person who was thinking about that, having this kind of time to pinpoint those glamours. So that would be a good start to really contemplate one's own sun sign. And also what I have noticed is wonderful alignment that DK has been given, that every morning we would align with that triangle, with our head center, with our soul, and with the master DK, and visualizing this triangle, which would, the base of it would touch the mental plane, and then the tip apex would touch our head center. And visualize how the light is pouring in the color light orange. And I have been really experiencing, we have been doing that about 1.5 years, how much it truly helps. So I would recommend everybody to start with this meditation or this alignment every morning and see what it is bringing, what kind of help it would bring in your lives.
Yes, we have the picture of it. We have the picture of it in. I don't want to go hunting for it right now, but it's a solid sort of light orange triangle with the master and the solar angel on the higher mental plane, and the head center at the inverted apex. Right. So the triangle is turned upside down, and the apex is like this. It's touching the head center. He says, begin your day every day this way, just for a few moments. Sit in a chair or just sit up in bed and begin your day this way. And remember that the basic color of the solar angel is this light orange color. And it relates to the fifth ray quality of the solar angel, which is fundamental, as that angel has been trained on fifth ray Sirius. So it's a higher type of manasic influence that is going to bring the light into the entire system. So I would go looking for it, but then if I don't want to take the time to do that right now. We talked about that this morning a bit and showed the picture. And many of you have seen the picture. Just imagine you're meditating. The point at the top of your head is touching, and then on the higher mental plane, Master DK and the solar angel are positioned to reinforce the descending light. And it's a solid orange triangle. It's not just the outline of a triangle. Okay, thank you, Tuija. Okay, Yvonne, looks like we're here with her. No, you want to see the picture, huh? Okay. Can I get to it? Can I get to it? That's the question. Maybe under the word pictures. I don't know. Oh. Sorry about that. Okay. As long as someone has asked, we've got to do it. Okay. So that's it. You see it? Is it as I described? There you are meditating, in the etheric brain pretty much. And here on the higher mental plane, we have the extension of the solar angel through the egoic lotus, and we have the presence of Master DK on the higher mental plane. Remember, the masters say they work with souls. So, DK is very unusual. He wrote all these letters, and he found himself doing some work with the personalities of the people involved. But generally, the masters are working on the higher mental plane, and here you are, the meditator, and here is the apex. So every day, even for a minute, visualize this. And he says, leave the rest to me. I'll take care of it. Okay. So there you go, Yvonne.
Yes, DK says about that he's helping in the life problem and in your service.
Yes, exactly. Exactly so. Okay, any other? Yes, right. I was going to call on you anyway, Alexandra. So anyway, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a comment and then a question. So my comment is, first of all, I just want to thank you and Tuija and Olivia and for all that you do and for this forthcoming webinar. That I want to go on record saying that how comforting it is to know that you are always keeping an eye on the world, on the whole of the world, and it's such an example to us because we can so easily get caught up in our part of the world or our personal situation. And it's like in the Bible when Jesus said, could you not stay awake for a little while? I feel like you folks are always watching for us, which is an example of, the Ask programs, but also your embracing interest in global affairs. And I just think it's so important, and that, to not just thank you, but to be aware of it all the time and to aspire to keep that very large perspective. I always find that works with people when they have a problem, is to broaden the perspective.
Yes.
And isn't it? And
yes.
Yeah, and also it's also giving me a sense of this, what we spoke about, an esoteric United Nations, that, we are spread across the globe, and we are all coming from different cultures, languages, and countries, and yet we are, of the same truth and of the same love of the ageless wisdom, and that desire is there more and more to come together. And you can just see it happening in the ether, an esoteric United Nations. I don't know, maybe one day will there be an Ageless Wisdom student in every 196 of the countries? I don't know if that's necessary, but certainly whoever we are, wherever we are, we have that power. As I keep telling my children, thoughts are things, and we're creating those thoughts, and other people are creating other thoughts. So why not we come together to create powerful thoughts? So I thank you very, very much for bringing this webinar into play this coming weekend. And my question is, that link that's up there, it's a link to register, and but there isn't anywhere where the actual announcement for the webinar and the broadcast and all the meditations, the silent meditations that are planned, it's not printed anywhere online. So in other words, we can't just share a link to the announcement, because the announcement went out as an email. So is that okay with you? I mean, it's not
share it with whomever you like, and Tuija should send it, if necessary, send it to you again. It does.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I've sent it out by email, but it's if you wanted to put it on Facebook or somewhere, or on Soulful Connections, there's not.
Well, it is on Soulful Connections, and we'll see. BL, can we get this anywhere on the Moria Federation? This announcement for these, that'd be great. That'd be terrific.
Send me what you want to put for the announcement. And
Joe, can you send this? This is Tuija. Joe has all of those. So Joe, can you send to BL?
Joe's not here, dear.
Okay, then when I am at home, I will send immediately.
Okay.
Is it just the email? I mean, BL, have you got the email? Because that's the whole announcement. It's it's got the heading. It's got
Alex, I have hundreds of emails. Please don't make me go through them if you have it readily available.
Okay.
I'll send it. I can send it to you right. I can send it to you right now. Okay. What would you like me to put as the heading? What would you like me to put as the heading?
Nothing. Just send it right now, and I'll get it, and I'll add it to the announcements on our Moira Federation website.
And then can you? And then and then I look and I'll find the link. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'll reply. Then I'll reply to you and let you so you can check it out. Okay.
That's
great.
So
that's great.
Within a couple of hours, it would be there, or.
I just sent the email to BL.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Okay. There you go. United Nations.
Fantastic.
Give me 5 or 10 minutes to get it posted, and
wow. Okay.
What might happen, I don't know. We might get more registrants than they actually allow us to have. But
that would be.
We'll cross that bridge when we get. It rarely happens.
BL, have you got it? Can you see it in your emails?
And Michael, Stacy, can you send that also to Victoria, because I sent to all of you, but it somehow then has disappeared. So can you send also to Victoria?
I don't have Victoria's.
Okay.
Okay. Then Tuija, when you get home, send to Michael Victoria's address. Okay, this is a little bit of housekeeping here, but we want to, friends,
thank you.
We want to publicize this as much as possible. In the same way that, look, both the United Kingdom and United States have the second-ray soul. So of the three nations, which are melting pots, really, and which are very important in the destiny, shaping the destiny of humanity, two of them are on the same ray as the Christ. And I believe there is an attack by the counter force against these two nations to have them be divided rather than unified. And we have leaders and potential leaders who just don't see the value of unity with one's soul allies, you might say. So the key during these next 6 years, almost 6.5 years, is that the people who really stand for the soul, the nations who really stand for the reappearance of the Christ and for the great second ray values will somehow reach a condition of unity and cooperation that can result in strength against the counter force. Now remember, in the age of Aquarius, it's not over yet, we are told that the white magicians will be in a battle with the strictly mental magicians. And you know what he means by that? He means that the power of the soul is not there. So many of these confrontations, including one that's happening right now, are predicted for humanity, and we internal workers, we have to learn how to stand in our own esoteric strength. Eventually, as you say, maybe just like every developed nation in the world will have its own esoteric school, maybe every reasonably developed country will send its representative, or they'll show up at our esoteric United Nations. And by the way, it's not exactly a new idea. Even 20 years ago, we were talking about this, about uniting, the esotericists in kind of a very, very strong internal United Nations. So we're very grateful, Alex, for your really deep research into these matters of what is occurring in
Michael,
the United Kingdom.
can I just make one comment?
Yes.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes.
When you've had your head down, involved in something so deeply, it's sometimes hard to be simple about it. But I'll just make one simple comment now, which is this: just a few sound bites, such as what has happened this week is said to be unprecedented in history. And there has been a constitutional crisis, and it is ongoing. And the important thing for us is that no one expected the resistance to a disunited Europe, to gain so much ground so fast. And what is again significant for us is that Parliament has become a voice for the people against executive powers. So people have lost confidence in politicians and their government and this sort of thing. But at the moment, it's the government versus the House of Parliament, the House of Commons. And those are the elected people representing the people in the country. And they have stood up against the government, and huge ground has been taken, achieved, a lot of light shown, and also very, very, very impressive speakers and debating, and very, very uplifting to hear so much truth being spoken to power, and people really laying it on the line as well. And so,
yes.
So right now, what's expected is that this deal is going to be voted down on Tuesday. The problem is what's going to happen after that. But I'll speak about that on the webinar. I'll speak about that.
Exactly.
But that is what is completely expected now. But anything can happen between now and Tuesday. But it's a bit like the midterm elections, when we all came together and we didn't know how it was going to go. And then, gradually, the blue wave, came, and then it came, and it came bigger, and then more and more, that sort of thing. And so this is kind of the ground that's being covered.
Yeah, well, I imagine that Master R, while he cannot compel the will of any voter or voting bloc, I imagine he's providing subjectively some pretty good energy which conduces to unity. That is my hope, and it seems to be the case. Obviously, it's all going to work out. It's just a question of whether we have to wait another 300 or 400 years for it really to happen. So we're on the brink right now, and as esotericists, or in training, I always add in training, we will do what we can do to support this unitive effort, standing for the unity of Europe in this case.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much, Alex. Thank you. Well, let's see. Okay. Okay, look, friends, quite a bit of time has passed now. And let's see, I'm just examining here whether there's anybody whose thought or question has not been addressed. But I think we can now move on into our meditation. All I have to do is find it. Excuse me. This computer is aching and groaning under the weight, you know. Okay, Glamour Project, there we go. And ask Glamours the raise. I just, there it is. Okay. Well, what we're dealing with here is straight dealing. There are so many officials or prominent people who are acting selfishly in the world today. They just can't see beyond their own very, very temporary selfish advantage. And what they do is they are sacrificing truth at all times. So what we want to do is continue to deal with this glamour of lying, of misrepresentation, of falsification. Nothing can stand when things are false, you know. And it will be our hope that the truth of the situation in the world, but especially right now in the United States, where there is an impending revelation by the very well integrated special counsel, whose middle name might be Integrity. You know, he's a great person, previously confirmed by everybody because they recognized his integrity. Whether this integrity of Robert Mueller can come forth with a picture of truth, which is so convincing that many people who have inclinations to believe what they want to believe will be set back, at least temporarily, because they'll have to admit that the powers that convey endless lies have indeed been lying to the people and to the world. And so this falsification of that which really is, and it's a glamour, it's a self-protective glamour, it's a glamour of the personality, it will be set back and truth will appear in the decisive days ahead. And then people will have to say, look, do I go for truth or do I go for what is now obvious to me, a lie? Okay, so we can help in that respect. All right. I'm sorry for this little cough, which I hope to be rid of in a few days in the clean air. So here we go. So we'll begin as we have begun with coming together, maybe not for 10 minutes as we would do in the smaller groups, but at least a coming together in the silence and allowing the factor of unity and synthesis to work in that silence. And you can, I think, really feel how the silence has a very synthetic effect, and how we are even further united in this silence. It's our unity as a group, which is very important as we do this work, which is to help protect human consciousness from the prevalent glamours. Now, we will use the protective formula, making the sign of the cross of divinity, from the ajna to the chest, to the left eye, to the right eye. And since glamour is a major point of attack for the counterforce, you can also imagine that it is a major point of danger to those who venture in and try to do something about it. So we, I think, wisely undertake this protective formula. Visualizing that we are tracing a lighted cross. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Then each of us has before us this lighted cross, and the entire group has before it the large lighted protective cross. We will blend three modes of light: the light of matter, the vital etheric physical light, the light of the mental plane, the lower mental plane, the logical, rational faculties. Let's bring those two lights together in our imagination. We can have then a vitalized, supported search for the truth using the instruments of reason and logic. So on the mental plane, two lights are merging. And this means, of course, that we are very alive in our mind. And we also then reach, as we say, upwards towards the soul light. We recognize the existence, the presence on the higher mental plane of soul light, and we bring it, as it were, down into that slightly lowered area of vibration we call the concrete mind, and blend our soul light, fuse our soul light with the other two lights, the vital light of matter, the light of the lower mind, and now soul light 3, imagined as merged into one. And from this triple light as one, our searchlight will be generated. So then we say together, followed by the sacred word, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Now, at this point in the meditation, we remember that of the 12 zodiacal lights, it is the light of Scorpio. It is called the light of day. And it is Scorpio particularly which offers two functions of Mercury to fight against the glamorous condition and bring in the light of day, the light of the intuition, and also the light of the clear, logical mind. Mercury, very powerful in Scorpio. Now we're going to use the formula. And as we do so, as the Tibetan says, the group members visualize the great searchlight that they have created, turning its light upon the astral plane. You do this in your own way as we use this formula, but remember that we are speaking of the group now as a whole, and we can do this individually, of course, and we will, but this is the group process. So, the searchlight for the group is turned on. It is powerful. It is revelatory, and it is dissipative, destructive in the right way. Get a feeling for that light being turned on. And we say, visualizing all the time this searchlight onto the smoky, foggy, dense, clouded, veiled, you name it, astral plane. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. The soul dwells in the world of meaning. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And now to strengthen our beam, we invoke the spiritual will. It has many stations as we descend, but pretty much it's a monadic power with concentration upon the atmic plane, the plane of spiritual will. We bring it all the way down and reinforce our group beam, as we say, with power upon its beam. The light is focused on the goal. So this is a powerful, luminous, radiant beam. It's a weapon and a beam of revelation. And the more vividly we visualize it, the better. And we have the confidence that it can be effective in, as we repeat the work, dissipating at least some small aspect of the prevailing world glamour. Now it is this glamour of lying, this glamour of misrepresentation, of falsehood. We've seen it so prominently. People say, okay, now I will tell the truth, and then they lie again. So just think for a moment what it is that lying does to people, to a nation, to humanity. I think ultimately we will find that lying works against every cosmic law. The law of economy, whereby effort is expended in the wrong direction by following the lie, and so the waste enters. The law of attraction, as trust is lost between the liar and the one who hears the lies, and the law of synthesis, where lying causes fragmentation, isolation, the inability to bridge between the units and see the oneness. So we know that it is said, that the devil is the father of lies, or maybe Satan, but, in the lower sense. So basically, it's the personality that lies, and the soul does not. The soul is the light of truth. So let us use these words of power with these thoughts in mind, that we must get rid of this misrepresentation of what is actually perceived, this distortion of what the instruments of perception reveal. Not that they are always accurate, but at least we have to be true to our own perceptions and not distort them, which is a form of robbery, a theft of the energy of others. So, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of lying. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. What is this quality associated with lying, misrepresentation, falsification? this apparent protection of the personality through lying. But our beam is working against this quality, working with radiance and power. And now, the power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of lying. The motive will be destroyed. The power to sustain falsification will be destroyed. Until we have the truth between all human beings. As the hierarchy has shown, it doesn't mean that the secrets of the sixth or seventh initiation are shouted from the housetops to everybody, but at least there is no falsification of communication. So now, with a few minutes, 5 minutes, we will visualize the light penetrating into the glamour. We'll use these words of power, and we produce the weakening, the dissipation, the banishment of this glamour of lying. So we begin now. Silence. And we imagine the sun of truth prevailing. We sound the Om 3 times. First we will withdraw our beam, and we will return. Let reality govern my every thought, and truth be the master of my life. This is the great mantra that the Tibetan has given us. Let reality govern my every thought, and truth be the master of my life. We'll now sound the Om 3 times. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and hopefully you will join us on Friday night, 7:30 GMT. I think we have still, it's Sunday night. I'm sorry. I'm always making that mistake. We'll continue with invoking the soul of nations tomorrow. We're on the evening schedule. And I think we'll be substituting our webinar accordingly. We have a little emergency here. I was trying to figure out how it worked with Glamour. One of our members mistakenly let the cat out of the bag in the middle of the night, So the finding of the cat became a very, very important project. And I now have received the signal that the cat is found. It has a happy ending. Okay. All right. Good night, everyone, and be with us. Be with us tomorrow night and Sunday night. That important webinar to help one of the major nations, the major gathering of nations, the UK, in its struggles to do the right thing with respect to the unity of Europe and the plans of the Master are. Thank you for attending. Many blessings. Lots of love from all of us, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.